Welcome to the Acronym Podcast, the only B2B marketing podcast where we don't care about CPLs, MQLs, and SQLs, and instead I'm going to be sitting down with the industry's top thought leaders, business owners, and entrepreneurs to uncover how they were able to build the confidence to make the leap into entrepreneurship and ultimately break free of those golden handcuffs. I'll also be discussing my own story, scaling a multiple six-figure marketing agency in under 12 months, and hope to be able to inspire the next generation of digital marketers to make that leap into entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Chris Roach. Welcome to the Acronym Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Ryan Sullivan, who is the founder of the Podcast Principles. In this episode, we're going to discuss how Ryan was able to make that leap into entrepreneurship, how he actually left his former career as a mechanic, transitioned into the marketing space, and how he's been able to grow his agency in the past 2 years. I'll see you in the episode. Hey Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on the Acronym Podcast. Very much excited to hear more about your story and dive into your entire journey with entrepreneurship.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, I'm excited to see what we can get into today and remove ourselves from the lens of straight B2B and maybe have a little bit more fun. Straight
B2B and straight BS as well. I say we leave that at the door and get into some real conversations with this. To start off with, if you don't mind just kind of giving us a little bit of a brief background on yourself, kind of what Podcast Principles is, and kind of how that company came about.
Yeah, so, what Podcast Principles does is we are a podcast coaching and production company. So half of our business is coaching, and then the other half is production. So the coaching is for current podcasters as well as people who are looking to launch their podcast. All of the coaching is centered around a 5-call podcast launch system. So that is the kind of launch side of things. So we work with people who would rather spend their money with us than spend time, sitting on YouTube and Google and all those type of things, and just to try to DIY it. And then the other side is the production, right? So you might go through our coaching system. You might be like, awesome, great. Like now I can launch my podcast, but hey, maybe I don't want to do the editing. So then that's how that side of the business was born, of just, people asking, can you do my video and my show notes? I started as an audio engineer, basically made $80 on Upwork in the first 3 months of trying to be a freelancer. And I said, okay, I guess this is for me. And it's going to work. Just living off savings, man. So I went from Upwork to applying for a job at a startup marketing agency to edit their podcast. They asked me if I would do everything with the podcast: interview, promote, edit, distribute. Didn't know how to do half of that, but I ended up taking that on, and that was really the start of helping people with their podcast. Was this one company, and that's a crazy story as well if we end up going into it. But
yeah, no, absolutely. I love the fact you went for the job without necessarily knowing 100% that you could do that, and basically figure out, listen, I'm going to learn as I go, because as a young businessman that's starting that, as someone that's kind of making that leap onto entrepreneurship, and if you're a marketer out there that's looking to make that leap, quite often you're going to get asked, I love what you're offering, but can you do this as well? And when you're first starting off, the answer is always yes, because you can always figure out how to do it if you're given enough time. It's when you turn around and go, I don't know how to do this, sorry, this isn't a good fit for me. When you're first starting out, sometimes just saying yes can really be the breakthrough that you need.
Oh, yeah, and think about it. Like any marketer who's going to leave a company to go on their own, they have everything that they need, like you were alluding to off camera, but they don't know how to package it, and they don't know how to sell it because they're marketers. Like marketers think they understand sales because they might work closely with salespeople, but they don't, because they're not there taking calls all day, and they're not there doing the psychology that goes into selling. So if you're a marketer that leaves your job as a marketer to go to be a full-time, maybe a freelancer / fractional to start, you're a business owner now, right? And this is this is how I explain podcasting to people. The second Chris gets off this podcast and opens up his editor, whether he's using GarageBand or Descript or you name it, he's now a podcast producer. He's not an interviewer anymore, right? So you are now taking on all these jobs, and so if I can go from mechanic to freelancer to part-time podcaster to owning a podcast agency, and do that with literally zero experience, like you said. I applied for that job. I was asking them what does B2B mean? What does B2C mean? What does CAC mean? What does LTV mean? I did not know anything about marketing at all. If I can go and literally get hired at that company and then go make a business later, I think anybody, especially somebody who did well in there, reasonably well in a company, you could totally do it too.
Yeah, well, I have to say, for those that listen to this podcast and that listen to a couple of episodes, this is the Acronym Podcast, which is the only B2B marketing podcast where we don't talk about CACs, LTVs, and kind of CPCs. So that's the last time we're going to mention any kind of marketing jargon.
I'm sorry, that's your
first strike, Ryan. There's no more mention of any marketing acronyms with that.
I love it.
As you go into, making that job, I'm curious because, you said you're a mechanic and forgive me for being ignorant. Are we talking car mechanic at this point?
Yeah, so I was what they call I'll give you a new one. Do you know what this one means? R&R. Do you know what that means?
Rest and recovery is what I'm thinking of, but I don't know if that's necessarily what you're thinking.
Remove and replace. So that's what my job was basically brakes, tires, remove the part, replace it. General auto mechanic, all makes and models. Yep.
So you figured being, in a position where you were an auto mechanic, the natural next step for you, instead of opening your own garage, was to start podcasting.
Yeah, it was one or the other, right? So I'm sitting there in 2018.
The natural progression is
the natural progression
podcasting.
As a mechanic. You either become a podcaster or a mechanic.
Absolutely.
So at home, I worked doing this. So I was going to college and working my mechanic job at the same time. I would come home at the end of the day, and if I didn't have to study, I would work on my podcast or my music. I'm also a rapper too. So
I saw that. Yep.
Yeah. So I've been doing that for longer than all of this. And that's also a couple of interesting stories within that. So what happened was I was working at this shop, and there's two sides. It's a mom and pop shop. I was the only employee. They only have up to 2 employees at one time because it's a 3-bay small shop, right? Okay. And the owner of the shop, he does the bodywork side, and then his son does the mechanic side, and I worked for the mechanic side. But the bodywork side, the owner of the entire thing comes to me one day, and he said, "Hey, I know you're kind of into podcasting and all this stuff. I don't really understand it, but you might like this CD." And the CD was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad taught me entrepreneurship, business, leverage, right? So, and, my parents were both blue collar, but my grandfather in the last 10 years of his life was a rich dad. He, after being a poor dad, quote unquote, his entire life, he figured out how to make money on the stock market in the last 15 years of his life. He had 3 houses and had learned, learned real estate in the last 15 years of his life. So the pieces started coming together. And at that point, I said, okay, I have 20 grand, right? I can either, and by the way, I'm 19. I got 20 grand. I'm like, I can either open this shop, because there's a shop, that same boss owns another shop down the street that he's not using, that he's willing to rent to me for $700 a month, right? Or I can go away to college and I can go and pursue that and just see where that takes me, and I chose the college route.
Got you. That's an awesome story. Actually, I was given that book when I was probably 14, 15 years old by my dad, and I took until about 19 to read it, and I was kicking myself after. I was like, I needed to be told, just sit down and read the damn book and then learn from it. It was that.
Well, my cheat code, dude? My cheat code was that it was an audiobook. I wouldn't have read the regular book, so I feel you.
Yeah, that's to be honest, that's my hack at the moment. I'm going through probably 3 books a month at the moment, just straight Audible. Out walking the dog, got the headphones in, just kind of going through different books at a time. It makes a huge difference to me. It's the consumption. I don't have time to sit down and read, and I want to get the knowledge from these books. And the ones I've read are phenomenal. I just need to find a way. So for me, that was kind of the life hack that I had with trying to consume as much information as possible. So as you make that leap and you decide, right, I'm going to go off to college and I'm going to become an audio engineer, you then go and work for a startup. You're working with a startup, presumably doing quite well, launching their podcast. At what point did you make that realization and that step to say, I don't want to work for anybody else anymore. I want to start my own thing. I want to become a business owner.
Yeah, so, I don't know how much time we have. I'll try to make sure this story's not too long. But in 2019, I met Gary Vee, and so after I watched him for 5-6 years daily V. I was watching Gary Vee when he wasn't the Gary Vee that he is today. When he was talking about wine still,
Yep.
And but I wasn't doing anything obviously with it. Like I just had a podcast a little bit, but that was it. I had no business.
Yeah.
I wasn't making money on the side, and so around the same time, the company I'm working for, first they took me off the podcast, that startup marketing company I was talking to you about. They took me off that podcast that I made for them because they said it wasn't working, even though they had me send emails on LinkedIn to try to book calls as if that works. But anyway, so that's not working apparently. I go to sales because the founder of the company can't even communicate with human beings. Like he just was on and off with substance abuse, just like, I don't know. It was terrible, man.
Yeah,
this guy, like, he just wanted to be a business owner, but he just tried to hack and cheat his way. What happened was I get put on the sales, and I'm grinding, dude. Like, this was like a couple months after I meet Gary Vee, and I'm going into Manhattan on my Christmas break from college. I'm going to Manhattan every day, 4-hour round trip commute, 2 hours there, 2 hours back, every single day. And he's asking me to work more and more and more, and I'm like burning the fuck out, right? And I'm sorry, I don't know if I can curse on this, but so I'm burning out, and so he says to me, I sleep in one morning, dude, because I'm like, I'm getting 4 hours of sleep, like I just can't do this. And he was like, dude, you got to get your life together. I'm going to give you the number of my life coach, and I'm going to pay for you to do an hour with this guy.
Okay.
By the end of that 1 hour call, me and the life coach had decided that what I was doing wasn't the thing I should be doing.
Yeah.
So that guy, my boss at the time, paid for me to talk to a life coach that would then advise me to quit that job. So that was, the Gary Vee was the first spark. This 1 hour call, my job paying me to quit. And then and then after that, one of the editors that he hired, he tried not to pay him $1,200, and I was like, I can't vibe with that, dude. I said, I'm next, right? So that was really the transition out of that job. Like I can go into transitioning, into podcast producing and things, and from there, what happened from there. But that's how I got out of the job.
It's interesting the triggers that people have kind of in their lives with that to be able to make that jump into entrepreneurship. And for you, obviously, it was meeting Gary Vee was obviously clearly quite a pivotal moment in your kind of growth into that, and then that meeting with the life coach. And it's funny for me, and it's great for me to hear that feedback, because every Friday afternoon, I give up my Friday afternoons. I have open office hours to meet with marketers who want to start a marketing agency with really no agenda. We have 30-minute slots. I'm like, hey, come and talk to me about what your biggest hurdle is right now. And if there is something that I can help you with, or perhaps provide guidance, I'm more than happy to do that. And I've helped 10 people quit their job in the last month. And it's one of those where afterwards I'm like, all right, I don't necessarily know where. Well, first of all, I know companies don't love me for this because I'm actively promoting that you should leave your job right now. And yes, you should get income on the side, and there's a whole process that you should go through. But I know in January alone, 10 marketers that made that leap into entrepreneurship because of the fact that they already had a little bit of side income, and they're debating it, and they're burnt out. And this is what we're seeing across the industry right now, is that as all these layoffs occur, it's not like the workload gets less. So you've now got less people doing more work. The burnout is going to, accelerate for a lot of these marketers, especially in early stage SaaS companies. That's where a lot of marketers, if you've not been in that field before, and then you suddenly get into that, it's quite overwhelming, the speed of which you have to work, and really the expectations. Now your work days are getting longer, you're burning out faster. And to me, I'm sitting there going, is it worth it? What's the point? Knowing that you can make more than that just by starting a consulting firm. So it's very interesting to hear kind of those pivotal moments for you as to what really set those triggers. Now, you're at this position, you said, right, the best thing for me is to leave, and I'm going to go and start my own company. Did you have clients at that point? Were you at zero? Was there a runway that you had? Did you have savings? Like, what did that first kind of, let's say, 3 months look like when you went out on your own?
Yeah, so I left in February, and I started the business of Podcast Principles in March of 2020. So it was
great timing.
Perfect, dude. School's done. No more class. I'm like breezing. Every class is just whatever. You just kind of get an A. Like they don't that I can't even teach, right? So I'm like, I'm good, and I got no other obligations, and my roommate left my apartment, so it's just me. And I sat there for 6 hours a day, and I just went on LinkedIn and took connection calls every day for probably like 3 to 6 months straight. And yeah, that was really how it was born. To answer your question, I messaged this guy who had a podcast. His name is Mo Ali. And if you Google Mo Ali TikTok, he's got 10 million followers. He's one of the most famous soccer players. I'd say like that's not a pro. I think he was a pro. But now he travels the world and makes TikToks with soccer players, like living his dream life. So I was like, this guy's cool. He's not going to answer me, but I'll send a message. And he was one of my first clients for like $200 a month. So I think when I left, when I left the job, I had 0 clients, 0 business. But I picked him up probably in the first couple weeks. And then there was a big account that I picked up probably 4 months after that. That kind of got me started. Yeah. So really no clients when I left. I'll tell you that. But no.
And I was going to say it. $200 a month as well. That's not. You're not living pretty at that point as well. So you must have been sitting there thinking, is there not that voice in your head saying, just go and get a job? Just like, what do you do? And I know you're in college. Again, my first SaaS company I launched in college. I know you can live very, very cheap. I've been there. I've done that. I covered all my expenses working in a bar, working in a restaurant, and actually paid for a developer just from tips from a restaurant. So I've been there and I've done that. But at some point, you must have been thinking, listen, I could make $50,000 going and getting a job somewhere straight out of college. Like, what's that kind of way up in your mind at that point? So
the job that I left 2 months before emails me again and goes, "Hey, we can pay you more now. We have a better offer. Our company's we're not bankrupt anymore, and $300 a week they were going to pay me, dude. And I was making $200 a month. So I'm like, shit." So I asked my roommate, he was there for the day, and I'm like, "Hey, dude, what do you think I should do?" And he's like, "I think you should go back with this job because you're going to make $300 a week, and you're going to use that to supplement and build your business. You might as well work with them for a few months and just to get some cash." And I said no, so I didn't take it, and I just kept doing my thing, kept living off savings, kept draining the savings,
And so, how long did it take you to hit that, I guess, what would have been your break-even point where you weren't losing money per month?
So I was also a DJ, and I'm still a DJ now. So like you said, the side gigs, like that's what I do. That stopped obviously because COVID hit, but that did come back. I guess started to come back in 2021. But yeah, so I got a $4,000 contract, probably like 4 months in. So in like August of 2020, that contract let me float for a few more months. But that was short-lived. That was a short-lived podcast. Really interesting. Celebrities and stuff. It was a really cool experience. It was like a Fortune 1000 company who paid for this podcast to happen, and no idea why they hired me. They were super. They should have hired like a real pro, but we got lucky on that one. But that second one was just me grinding on Upwork. So it was Upwork and LinkedIn all day, dude. But yeah, that second contract let me float for probably another 4 months after that.
Upwork is an absolute. It's a needle in the haystack platform.
You mean a hellscape of underpayment? I've actually found some very good clients through Me too.
Upwork.
No, I've done okay on it. Yeah, totally.
It's such a crapshoot with trying to find good quality, and that's the thing. I have a full-time VA right now who is every day on Upwork trying to find qualified job opportunities for us, and we're very specific with our criteria. We don't waste time with it. So maybe we're finding 3 to 5 a week, but their full-time job is just finding opportunities on Upwork for us. I always say when you're first starting out, go to Upwork, and instead of trying to send them a proposal through Upwork because they're going to get 50 proposals, go and find the company name. And there's a couple of ways you can do that, but if you can get that person's company name, connect with them on LinkedIn, send them a Loom video, give them a cold call, your conversion rate goes through the roof when you start doing that on Upwork. And it's something that any marketer right now, if you've been laid off and you have a skill set, whether that's graphic design, video editing, social media marketing, Google Ads, SEO, whatever that is, you can find clients on Upwork within 30 days. You've just got to figure out how to do that, and it's a lot of trial and error. But once you figure that out, it's an absolute gold mine of a platform. If you can manage your time in there, because you can lose a lot of time on that platform as well.
Yeah. So funny enough, that first company the startup marketing company that I worked at, the way I got that job was it's by the way not a great idea to put your company name on the post because you will get these guys who hit you up, and some of them are Chris level and his VA, and some of them are not, right?
Oh, so, yeah, I love it when I see a company name name on it, I'm like, oh, golden.
We're done. Dude, yeah. exactly. How many more of us's are going to be applying to that? Like, not many with the track record that we have.
That's true, yeah.
And so what I did was I found the company name was there, thank God. I went on the website, booked a call as if I was a company, and that's how I got in front of the founder. And then he said, okay, come in and interview. So, yeah, 100%. Your system works. I've done it multiple times, literally ended up getting almost a full-time job out of it, so...
Yeah, we have tons of automations with it, but our most successful kind of messaging is, listen, instead of sifting through those 50 proposals, we meet all of your criteria. Do you want to have a call? Don't waste because again, if you post on Upwork and you're for us, we're looking at Series A to Series C SaaS companies that are spending $10,000 to $250,000 a month on ad spend. I mean, it's a large range, but it's qualified. We're not messing around with small companies with this. So it's a very small fraction of the actual job postings we're going after, which is why when we find someone, we're like, hey, this is our portfolio, these are the clients we work with, this is testimonials. Don't waste your time sifting through those 50 proposals from all these international agencies. We're a vetted, US-based agency, with a track record. Here's our proposal. Let us know if you want to get a call. And that works so much more successfully than anything else I've seen on Upwork.
No, it's so true, dude. Yeah. Why are you going to do what everybody else is doing? Like, that's what...
Exactly.
LinkedIn, right? My posts, I don't care. I do posts every day. It's not what drives me. That's not what books me calls. Yeah. Comments book me calls. But I figured that out. I figured out how to make the comments that book calls. So, because everybody else is trying to make their posts work. So, okay, so if every single post is created to try to book calls, not all of them, but many of them, then I'll go in a different lane and figure out where there's way less competition, right? So you calling on the phone lines are not popping. The Upwork lines are popping. So you went to the channel that had way less volume. And
nobody cold. There isn't another marketer on the planet that will cold call like I can cold call. They're all terrified. That's the difference. Is that I've grown up through sales. I was chief revenue officer before getting into this, so I know that I can cold call just to set a meeting. But
dude, we could sell a fucking podcast and a marketing strategy together in probably 6 minutes, dude. You know what I'm saying? I feel you. They're not, and that's an important point to make. It's like not everybody's like us. And so, so that's the thing. There's people, especially marketers, they're like numbers people. They're like more passive. They're in the behind the scenes.
Exactly.
I get that. And it's easier for people like us. You got to get out of your comfort zone. It's fucking hard, There's no other way, dude,
But that, I think, is something you learn from starting a business, and that's been because I've been publishing a lot of content recently, trying to, like I say, encourage marketers, not necessarily marketers just to quit, but encouraging marketers to listen. Working for a company isn't your only option, and right now, with all the layoffs that are happening, basically you're putting your financial time, freedom, control in somebody else's hands. And for me, it's the control element. I'm the breadwinner for my family. I don't want anybody else telling me whether I'm going to have a job tomorrow. I would have to lose all of our clients tomorrow, and then in a year's time, I would potentially have an issue if I could acquire no clients. So for me, taking control is such an important part of that, and I've been publishing a lot of content recently on trying to encourage marketers to do that. But the negative pushback I'm getting from, and it's ironic actually, because the negative pushback I get is from other fractional CMOs, and I think it's because they don't want the competition. But the pushback is, listen, not everybody can be a business owner. Not everybody knows how to sell. Nobody is born with the ability to sell. Babies can't sell. Nobody's born with this innate skill. You learn it over time, and as you begin to do it and practice and start your own business, at that point you will develop that skill set similar to yourself. You obviously have that entrepreneurial journey. You're out commuting, you're grinding, you're going into Manhattan, you're 2 hours either way. Not a lot of people are willing to do that. You've already been there. You've basically crafted this skill, and now obviously you're very, very talented at that. But that doesn't happen instantly. It can take months, years to perfect the ability to do that, and that's where it's great seeing, guys like yourself that have come up and been able to actually accomplish that, because I think there's this almost misconception of, hey, listen, I can't sell, like I'm just not confident to be able to do that. You build that. It's like going to the gym. It's a muscle that you build and you train, and then you get better at it.
4 years in, I'm now at the point where if I'm on a call, like if you're listening to this right now and you book a call with me that's like the podcast, like I guess discovery call, you're probably not going to want to book that, because I'm going to either expose all your excuses, right? Like you're either gonna like I'm gonna get you fired up about changing something, right? Like over 4 years, I've taken 100 calls or whatever. I've finally now, after watching every Alex Hormozy video, reading all the books, sales books, marketing, right? I'm finally able to make basically like if they hit the criteria, sell them, not because I'm trying to sell them, but because they want the thing because it's going to help them, right? So like it's you're 100% right, dude. It was only reps. Like it's crazy. From 2 months ago, like from November to now, everything's changed. But it was 5 years of that, So 100%, dude. It's reps, and I'm super obsessed with fitness, so I love using any fitness analogies. 100%.
Yeah, I love the shout out to Alex Hormozy then as well. Obviously, I've followed a lot of his content. I'm actually trying to get Layla to come on the podcast right now. I've reached out to her. I'm waiting for a response on it. I'm trying to get Layla to come on to the podcast at the moment.
Yeah, I did the LinkedIn DM. I didn't get a response, so you find a different way if that's what you did. Try to find an email. Yeah, try to find an assistant or an email. That's it works with some and not with others.
Yeah, that's my she's somebody I've been trying to get onto the podcast, especially because there's a lot of with my audience, there's a lot of women marketers that are not making that jump. There's a lot of, out of my online communities in the course, it's a lot of female marketers are looking to make that leap. So, I want to be able to showcase successful women entrepreneurs as well, and really have that even split and show that inspiration. And for me, she's the perfect example of a woman entrepreneur that's been able to scale, very, very successfully with that. And I'd love to get her insight onto, how to start, how to make that leap, and really, being able to build that. So hopefully we'll have her on in the next couple of weeks. I guess we'll find out. I'll probably chop up this bit and send it to her and see if we can get a response from that as well.
Hey, you're putting it out there. I mean, that's the first thing you could do. Then take the action, and then if that action doesn't work, we try the next action. Man, you got it.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick moment to pause this episode and thank our sponsors. Firstly, we've got the first sponsor, which is True Classic, the clothing company. As you all know from all of my content, I've been wearing True Classic for the last 18 months, and it truly is the staple of my wardrobe. What I find is that a lot of the clothes that I buy previously were all too baggy. They didn't fit right. The best part about True Classic, not only is it incredibly soft, but for those of you that have broader shoulders, that have larger arms, who just tend to be a little bit more athletic, the fit is absolutely amazing. It makes you look great. And a lot of people call these really the push-up bras for guys. I can tell you, when you wear these t-shirts, you look good. If you're interested in trying True Classic, there's going to be a link in the description of this episode. There's going to be my personal link, or you can go to trueclassics.com/thechrisroach. Go ahead, check out the store. I guarantee you will not be sorry if you start wearing True Classics. If you do end up purchasing them, please let me know what you purchased. I'm curious to hear feedback. Moving on to our second sponsor, which is the Independent Marketer, which is an online course and community that I've created to be able to teach digital marketers how to go out and break out of the golden handcuffs and ultimately launch either their own freelancing career or build it into their own digital marketing agency. In the description is going to be a link to that course. And as a thank you for listening to this podcast, there's going to be a special $100 discount on that course as well. If you do have any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to me directly or shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Back to the episode. Looking at, obviously, being a business owner, the experience that you've had, can you talk about some of the challenges that you've faced, either personally, financially? You've talked about kind of those first couple of months. Yes, you're a kid in college that's just graduated, like you don't have too many expenses, and for a lot of people listening, like myself, it's not as feasible to make, $1,000, $2,000 a month right now. It was not possible. But can you talk about some of the challenges that you face that you've had to overcome in that first 12 months of starting a business?
Yeah, I would first of all say that I wouldn't recommend doing it how I'm doing it. I would recommend what Gary Vee shoves down everybody's throat, which is like stay at your job if you don't completely hate it. So yes, you and Chris, you've helped many people leave their jobs, but also if you don't have a financial advisor and a life coach and a business coach, dude, I probably wouldn't recommend taking the leap until you have other people who can guarantee that you at least have done everything to maximize your success at the next step. Yeah. And I'm saying that because I couldn't nor didn't have any of that. I'm good, right? I'm all right now. What I always say is it's working enough for me to keep going, right? But I would have, skipped a lot of steps and also not wasted a lot of time if I would have had certain people in my life who could have maybe help me do things a little differently. I don't regret a thing, right? But I would just say that if you can have that self-awareness before you go in, do it. Say, I don't know my finances as good as I should. I don't really have a good grip on my investments. Okay, let's just get that all ready to go, right? Like, if you have a great advisor, they're not going to tell you, don't quit your job. They're going to help you quit your job, right? So, and my guys, I talk to them once or twice a year, right? Like, it's not like I'm calling them on the phone every day, but just as many things as you can put in order. That car payment, maybe we don't need an M2. Maybe we can go for an Accord, right? Like, these are things people don't think about. That's why I'm, making these caveats, because it's like, these are the things that are going to catch up with you for sure. And so I'll say, like, I'll answer your question. Things that have been difficult is, first of all, probably the one that, I think means the most is relationships, right? Like, I'm in a relationship. My girlfriend has a 9-to-5. I do this. Our lives are pretty different. Like, she came from the entertainment industry a little bit too, so me being a DJ, she understands that. But nobody, especially people who aren't in going solo, they're not going to get it how you get it. And so you got to keep that. And I'm trying to think of the most practical things here. So relationships 100%, and making sure that it's not like they have to understand. It's just that they need to know that you're confident in doing it, and then they'll be confident in you doing it.
Just to jump in there, that's what you touched on. What you touched on the financial side is great advice, and a lot of marketers and a lot of professionals that want to make the leap to entrepreneurship, they're not necessarily willing to downgrade their life. And that's something, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that, to be fair, not against anyone that doesn't want to do that. I personally am not particularly willing to downgrade my life at this point too much. I'm 28 years old. We're doing very well. I like where we're at. We're making good money. We have a successful business. I'm not truly willing to downgrade it too much. I have the ability to almost flex and shrink with that. And to be honest, I've always been very good with numbers. I've always been very driven by monetary rewards, and that's why I got into sales to start off with. That's why I went to 100% commission in my previous job, and we ended up making triple the next person's salary. That was kind of, for me, it's always been that way, and that's what's really allowed me to be focused. But my advice is, if you're looking to make that leap, first thing you need to do, and whether that's with a financial advisor, whether that's with your spouse, whether that's just sitting down with somebody that really has a little bit more of a expertise with finances, figure out what your expenses are. That's the biggest thing to do. For me, when I was making that leap, it was about $3,000 a month. So I knew anything above $3,000 a month was profit. And that to me was interesting, because I was making six figures at this point. So I'm thinking, right, I got a little bit built up in terms of runway, but I don't actually need to make six figures. And it's quite interesting when you think about that, because everybody compares, this is what I'm making at my job, this is what I want to make now. So I'm making 100 grand now, I want to make 100 grand as a marketing agency owner. But you actually only need to make 3,000 a month, or 4,000 a month, or 5,000 a month, whatever that kind of baseline is for you. And once you figure out how to do that, get the clients on the side to be able to replace your expenses, because then when you make that leap into becoming an entrepreneur, you've got your expenses covered, you can breathe easily. And that's the difference, is that you're not freaking out, you're not losing money, because if you don't, let's say your expenses are 5 grand, if you make that jump, you're now losing 5,000 a month. That would scare me shitless, absolute terrify me. So for me, I made sure my expenses were covered, and then we started to build up. Right now we got 2 clients, then we get 3 clients. It took me 30 days to get to that 10,000 a month in revenue. That's not going to be the case for everybody. I have a sales background. I have a network. I just literally exited a 7-figure software development agency. Getting into a marketing agency, it was nothing new to me in terms of the way to go and acquire clients. But once I got to that point, I could then figure out how I wanted to scale that. And that to me is the key takeaway on the finances side, is make sure basically your ass is covered, because then you can at least have infinite runway before you have an issue, and then you start to build it up, and then you can take in the intrinsic values, such as, do I value spending time with my wife and my children greater than commuting 2 hours each day to Manhattan? Obviously, that's worth more to me that way. So that's kind of the way to look at that. And I think with the spouse, or with relationships, that's also phenomenal advice, because when I was starting, my wife was working in the school, so she's working during the day, and I'm working at home, and I have all this freedom. I say, listen, I want to go and travel. I don't want to sit around in Wisconsin in the snow. And we were never able to do that, because she had to go to a school. She had a master's. She was a child life specialist. She was going into it. So About a year ago, we hired her with Catalyst. She came on, she handles all my video production, she handles everything with our podcast now. So she then joined Catalyst, and now we both have that financial freedom. And that for me is one of the greatest achievements I've had with Catalyst. Not hitting revenue, not hitting, clients, some of the amazing, like multiple millions of dollars of sales that we've had for clients. It was the ability that now it can truly support me and my wife, our entire family, and it gave us that freedom, and that's worth a lot more than what was a six-figure salary before. Like, to me, that payoff, I wouldn't change. I could make 50 grand a year, I wouldn't care. To me, that was the biggest payoff, was getting to that point, and I wouldn't now change that for anything.
Yeah, man, I just need your tactics on how to get your girl to work for you. That's one's been pretty difficult. No, so funny enough, my girlfriend's a teacher, so
Okay.
I know how it is being at school all day. She has the summers off. She's loves it, so she's never gonna work. I don't want her to ever work for me or with. If we do that, it's our own thing that we're starting like together. That's completely separate. But it's interesting, and like I am probably a little bit different than you as well in terms of like the money. I didn't care about money at all. Like that startup marketing job, he was like, yo, dude, 15% commissions on everything. He landed a $30,000 client that I did the intro call for, and I'm like, dude, I don't even care. Like, I don't even need that $1,500 or whatever. Like, it just, it never motivated me. So, I had a business in high school / into college that is now a legal business for most people, where I made a lot of money, and that's how I learned sales, right? And I like to tell that too, because that's reality. Like, I was a mechanic, I was a degenerate, my friends were addicted to drugs, I get it, and I say that because all of our personalities are different. All of us marketers or salespeople, whatever, we came from different backgrounds. All of our wives and girlfriends do different things. Like, everybody's got their unique situation. But yeah, I think that's amazing that that you guys can work together now. We tried to work together. It's interesting, but I also don't want to forget these few things. I think on that same point of, what are the difficulties that you're going to face? Mm-hmm. I think first one's leadership. If you're a marketer, you may have managed some people, but you don't know what it's like to pay people's bills for them, and they're reliant on you to pay their bills. Like, that's a different animal. So that's a whole hour-long conversation. And then within that, just delegation itself. And then what I've spent the most time on in the last year is talent, and keeping the talent, right? So those are really the things for me. Like you said, sales doesn't come naturally to most people. Yeah, neither does leadership, neither does, delegation, neither does hiring. It's just, it's all going to be new. You'll be better at some things than others, but yeah, those are the few for me too.
And this is the thing with with going out on your own. It's not always this amazing experience. I think it's almost it's over glamorized in that way that it's going to suddenly you go out on your own and you're gonna make multiple six figures as an agency owner, and you're gonna work 5 hours a week, and you're gonna travel the world and all these things with that, and it's not really the realistic expectations, and there's a lot of things that you have to develop internally with your skill set as well, but it makes you a better person, and it makes you better at whatever field you're in right now. And that's where a lot of marketers have said to me, I want to go out on my own, but if I fail, I'm nervous that I won't get hired afterwards. I'm nervous it's going to be like a gap on my resume.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, absolute nonsense. I've had more job offers in the last 12 months than I can count. Like, it's not.
I know. I guess they've never edited a job search podcast, but I edited 300 episodes of 2 different job search and job networking podcasts, and I'm an unofficial expert in real estate, job search, the military. Like, I've edited so many of these podcasts, it's ridiculous that now I don't edit anymore, but I've taken all the game. It's quantity, right? Like, it's like until you're like me and you've heard 250 stories of people getting jobs, you don't realize that a gap doesn't matter, because why would you think like that's like saying like, hey, when I was 9 years old, I lost a basketball game, and now that affects my job when I'm 25. Like, it doesn't matter unless it matters to one person, and then guess how many other people there are in the world who can hire you.
Yeah, and that's exactly. If it doesn't resonate with someone else, it's
worst case. One person doesn't care. Worst case,
and it's probably not a great fit working for that company anyway.
There you go. You want them to, which I would say. By the way, I don't even look at resumes, but if I did, I would say, oh, this Gap, what were you doing? They're like, I
Yeah.
went to Czechoslovakia for 9 months. And I'm like, all right, sick. How was that? And then just tell me about your experience. I'm just genuinely interested, you know?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we are coming a little close on time here, so I got a couple more questions that I want to run through with you. Firstly, if you are talking directly to somebody that's looking at starting their own business, what advice would you have to someone that either has just been laid off and perhaps doesn't know what the next step is? Maybe they are still currently working somewhere and they're looking at making that leap into entrepreneurship, but are dealing with kind of the demons of imposter syndrome. Like, what kind of advice would you give to them?
I'll say, like, your clients don't care about imposter syndrome. So just so you know, when there's a deadline, the excuse can never be, I had imposter syndrome. It exists for everybody, by the way. It does. If you have it, that means you're doing good. It's like anxiety. If you have anxiety before stepping on stage, it's because you care. If you don't, that's because you've done it 4,000 times, or it's because you don't care. So that's kind of how I look at imposter syndrome. Like, I can't spend mental energy on it because it shouldn't exist, but it does. So I'm like, if it doesn't help me, then I'm good. I get to take a little reality check. Am I really as good as I am? Well, the last client was happy. Okay, cool. Hopefully the next client will be happy. Move on. Easier for some than others. That's kind of a mental health thing rather than a business thing. But advice is, don't take any advice. Just figure it out. Just take the action. Just try. Like, Chris can help you, but he also might not be able to help you. I can help you with your podcast, but I also might not be able to help you. So it's just, everything is so custom in business and podcasting and sales and marketing that, if the deal is that the next company's marketing software is the one that makes them successful, and then the next company's software is a different one and they're also successful, that's how it is for everything in business. Yeah. So, it's just, everything it depends. So for me personally, I'm a self-development nerd and like a fitness nerd and stuff. I'll watch and consume so much shit. And I fall victim to not applying stuff and just getting in this loop of like business books and business podcasts. But what's the next thing I have to do? Well, I have to fix my sales pipeline. Okay, so why am I watching a thing on how to make $100 million if I haven't made $1 million? So it's very easy to take in advice and like feel good about it, but 99% of it, basically consume all the advice, whatever advice you want. Consider 1% of it, and then like probably apply 1% of that. That would be, and that's a Layla Hormozi trick too. Like, she's not out there watching random YouTube videos for a reason. She's just solving the next problem she has. I'm not as good at that for sure. I like to browse around, but that would be my advice on advice, which is probably don't take it. Or
it's just, it's the analysis paralysis you get into. It's not being able to take action. And I think the point you made about imposter syndrome is a key takeaway, in that if you're not fearful about what you're trying to accomplish, or if it doesn't make you nervous to go out and start an agency or to offer these services, because that's the biggest thing. A lot of marketers, I don't know if I have the skill set to be able to offer this. My logic and my argument is, you've already got a company paying you $75,000 a year to do this for them. Why not have 5 more? What's stopping you from offering this as a service? Somebody valued you enough to pay you full-time, plus benefits, plus paid time off, plus 401k match, and yet you're nervous about pitching it at $3,000 a month now to go and find another client. So you have that proof already built in, and if you're not feeling a little nervous, you're probably not pushing yourself to a level that you really want to be at. If you're that comfortable where you've done it so many times, what's the point? At that point, like, why not push yourself to be a little bit further? You're never going to better yourself as a marketer by only working with kind of in your comfort zone. And I think that's a great takeaway from this episode, is push outside of your comfort zone, because you really can accomplish things. And then once you do it, it feels amazing. Because I've done that. I've had clients where they, hey, have you done this before? Oh yeah, for sure. And then we've got to figure out how to do it. And then we knock it out of the park, and it's like, oh, now we have an entire template we can use for other clients because they asked us to do this, project for them that we hadn't really no idea what we were doing at the beginning, but we had a rough idea, and I was a little nervous to take on the project because it's an enormous client, and then we knock it out the park, and now we can do it with all of our clients, and now our processes improve. And we found that over the last 18 months of kind of building in from Series A companies to Series C companies, we've really been able to continue to progress our offering by taking clients that maybe we should have been a little bit nervous to kind of bring on.
If you're not nervous, then fucking quit then. I don't know. Like, what are you doing it for? Like, right? And to your point, don't quit, by the way. But to your point, you're an entrepreneur now. You're just not doing sales, marketing, HR, billing, right? Like, if you have a job as a marketer, you're a business owner. You just don't own the business and you don't do any of the business stuff. Like, you're gonna have the same job. Like, your job's not gonna change. You're just gonna also do the other 5 functions of the business. Like, it's kind of simple, you know? Like, that's how I look at it. If you're within a company, they're paying you for a service. They're just buying your time on a contract basis instead of renting your time, right? So it's just kind of the same thing. It's just a different format, you know.
At a discounted rate, I'll add, when you are working full time.
Yeah, exactly.
Severely discounted rate.
I mean, most people. I mean, listen. My favorite thing is that Warren Buffett makes more on Apple than the CEO of Apple. You know, it's like. This is a game, and you're entering a different game, but it's essentially the same thing, and you're getting underpaid as it is, you know? So it's like, what's the worst that happens? You're still getting underpaid, but you don't have a boss. I mean,
well, that's to me. I mean, the areas you talked about is, yes, you have to do HR, yes, you have to do accounting, you have to learn to do sales. There's all these elements of the business, but once you get good at doing one area of business very, very well, you can outsource the rest. You don't have to do everything, and that's a lesson that I learned very early on, is that I don't have to be doing everything for the business. That's why we have a VA doing a lot of the prospecting. That's why we have internal marketers underneath us that are handling some of the client accounts. That's why we have individuals that do bookkeeping, accounting, tax filing. I don't do everything with that. It's not necessary to be able to do that. And I think when people first make that jump, they're terrified of, I'm going to have to do everything. Only for the first 6 months. After that, you can really start to, once you've got a couple of clients, once you're starting to hit some serious revenue, for me, it was once you get past like 10 grand a month, once you hit that benchmark, start to see how you can buy back your time, because I've been there where, we've made 50,000 a month, but I was working way more hours than I wanted to, so I started buying back more time and bringing people underneath me, and I started getting to that point where I was like, that to me makes a lot more sense, because I value my time with my family. We travel around, we have a great life with this. I value that more than that additional 10,000 a month that we can make, because I know that puts me over the threshold of where I really feel comfortable working.
Yeah, I know, and I know we gotta wrap, but this coincides with this completely. Brad Lee, not sure if you follow him, but he said most people, when they get 5K, think it's their 5K. If you had a job making $75,000 a year and you got a $5,000 bonus, you look at that $5,000 and you go, "This is my $5,000." When people step into business, they make the mistake of doing the same thing. They go, "I just got a $25,000 contract. This is my $5,000. I'm going to take this $5,000." You got to take the $5,000 and go, "This is not my $5,000." Put it in the business account and then spend the shit out of it on things that'll make you back 6 or 7 or 8, right? It's like, it's a mindset shift. It's an initial reaction is not, "This is my $5,000. It's, this is not my $5,000. I got to use this to make another 5."
Which, just to piggyback on that, before we end, the easiest way to do that is to set up your business bank account and to have that as a separate account.
Now that took me about 4 years to set up, Chris.
So you've got to be doing that
sooner. Do this sooner.
From day one.
Accounting.
From day one, because you have your business bank account set up, and let's say you're doing 10,000 a month. When you're first starting out, put the 10 grand a month into the business bank account, and then pay yourself whatever your expenses are. Let's say it's 3,500. Pay yourself that for the first 6 months. Then you build up a cash reserves. Now you've got buying power, and that to me was the hack that I really went in the first 12 months. I was like, now I have. I mean, at this point, we have a year's runway. For myself personally, I have about 3 years runway at the moment, where we would lose all clients. Like, it's not really an issue. But I use that to invest in the business, and that's allowed us to scale very, very aggressively. Is that I didn't try and make $150,000 a year right out of the gate. I invested it into the business so we could grow, in the long term, and I kind of sacrificed my short term incentives, to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, man. No, I suggest doing it that way.
Absolutely.
You don't have to free ball it. Most people are going to do that anyway. And if you need any help, you go to Chris, you go to fucking YouTube, you go to LinkedIn. I mean, all the answers are out there,
Absolutely. Well, hey, Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Loved our conversation today. For those that are listening that do want to get in contact with you or perhaps learn more about your journey, learn more about the company, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so if you're using LinkedIn, Ryan R. Sullivan on LinkedIn, you should be able to find me that way. My name's super common, other platforms not sure. But yeah, Instagram, I'm actually moving over to YouTube. So if you're on the video version right now, you might see it. It's Sully Bop. So if you want to Google or sullybop.com, SULLYBOP, that's my personal, that's my music, that's my podcast, that's my rap and production and DJing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then LinkedIn's more of my content business, the podcast business. That's all there on LinkedIn or podcastprinciples.com as well. So.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Well, we'll make sure all those links are included, both on the podcast and the YouTube, and then on any of the shorts as well. But really appreciate you taking the time to come on today. It was a pleasure learning more about your story. Very inspirational, and I hope there's a lot of people that have been inspired by this.
This was a lot of fun, Chris. Keep doing it, man. I'm excited for this podcast, brother.
Yep, cheers. And that concludes this episode. If you have any questions, please head into the comments where you'll find all of the available links. If you have any questions on our sponsors, all the links will be in the description. Please stay tuned for the next episode.